Hey yous guys, gals, and bums, and welcome back to A Few Bad Men. Today, I got a treat for yous guys. Not only will we be doing our first workup on a woman, I guess that would make this a Few Bad Women episode. All right. And since it's Black History Month, this is our first black gangster. This woman was truly an anomaly. Not only was she black, but she may be the only female boss now that I think about it. She carved out an empire in Harlem in the 20s and was willing to trade bullets with anybody trying to take what was hers. Even though she wore a dress, this chick had balls, and she was ready to kick off her expensive shoes and go toe-to-toe with the biggest gangsters of her time. Guys like Dutch Shultz and Lucky Luciano. She outlived them all. I'm talking about Stephanie St.Claire, the Madam Queen of Policy. But first things first, I hear say this guy's subscriber been singing like Eddie Cantor to the coppers. I think you know what needs to be done. That's how you make your bones. If you want to join a Few Bad Men gang, you gotta make your bones. You gotta bump off that subscribe button. Make sure he don't come back. All right, break that thumb, ring that bell, and all the other good stuff you're supposed to do on YouTube. All right, you know. Go to the merch store. Get yourself something nice, get your guys something nice, get your guys something nice. All right, I'm going to be making a new Shots Rang Out shirt. So I'm going to put that up there and I'll show you that next week. That'll be available for next week. All right, for all my true gang members and the guys who've already hit subscribe button. All right, so let's get into this. Stephanie St.Claire was born Christmas Eve, 1897, in Moulay Grand Terre, French West Indies, present-day Guadeloupe, to a single mother named Felicienne. At this time, only married women could become citizens, and Stephanie's mother was not, and therefore she had no rights, and that meant Stephanie had no rights. Her mother worked hard to send Stephanie to school, but when Stephanie was 15, her mother became ill, and she dropped out of school to help the family. She took a job as a maid for a rich family whose son would regularly assault her sexually. Despite this, she was able to save up money, and when her mother died, she left Guadeloupe for Marseille, France. But she had to lie about her age and place of birth due to the fact that she was too young to travel without a representative. So she gave her date of birth as 1887 and her place of birth as Marseille. Now, some sources say she went to Canada just outside of Montreal before making her way to Harlem. And she didn't know English until she taught herself English on her way over here from Marseille. All right. But anyway, she arrived in Harlem circa 1911, during a time when many African Americans were settling in there after their migration from the South or the Caribbean, the Harlem Renaissance. Stephanie soon fell in love with a small-time crook, but this guy was no good. He soon tried to pimp her out, but Stephanie was not the fool, and she left New York the next night. She had decided to go somewhere down south, but this was Jim Crow America. It was not always safe to travel as a black person. During her journey, her bus was stopped by the KKK. Several black passengers were hung or burnt alive in front of her, and she was repeatedly sexually assaulted. After this, she made her way back to Harlem, where she met a new boyfriend. The two started selling dope, and after a few months, she had made $30,000 and broke away from her boyfriend and started her own business. She hired men and paid police to look the other way. This didn't sit too well with her partner/boyfriend. Once he attacked her, but Stephanie fought back. She pushed him so hard that he hit his head on a table and went to sleep and never woke up. On April 12, 1917, Stephanie St.Claire made the decision that would launch her name into the history books. She invested $10,000 and opened her own policy bank. Now, for those of you who don't know what policy is, I'm going to give you the skinny, all right, the brief skinny. Policy was basically the lottery, all right? You picked three numbers from 0 to 999, and you placed your bet as low as a penny. The winning number was based on two figures. the total daily clearance among member banks and the Federal Reserve bank credit balance. For example, say the clearings were 589 million and the balance was 116 million. The winning number would be 896. All right, 896. Anyone lucky enough to bet on 896 that day received a payout. Now, some bankers use other systems like the last three numbers, other total winnings at a racetrack, but basically that was it. The bankers collected all the rest of the money, and the next day the game restarted with new bets and a new winning number. At 100-to-1 odds, you could win $6 if your number hit if you bet a penny. Now, this was the time when the average black worker made 35 cents an hour. The numbers racket was more than just gambling in Harlem. It was ingrained in the community. The policy game not only offered opportunity to earn some extra cash and pay some people's rent, it employed many young black men. Stephanie employed as many as 50 people as controllers, clerks, messengers, and number runners. This was the time when most legitimate banks would not accept black folks. So policy became a way to invest money of a sort of an urban stock market. Everyone in Harlem played, from the laundry woman to the guy at the pool hall, as well as the respectable school teacher. While male bankers dominated the numbers game, numerous enterprising women strong-armed their way into the industry. Alberta Green, nicknamed the policy queen of South Jamaica Queens by the press, employed 5 to 10 collectors and had several runners before her arrest in 1935. Women also worked as employees at number banks. And during her teenage years, singer Ella Fitzgerald actually worked as a Harlem numbers runner. All these pennies added up. Stephanie St.Claire became Madam Queen of Policy, and she was making $20,000 a year in the 20s, which allowed her to live a lavish lifestyle. She lived in a building at 409 Edgecombe Avenue with other black celebrities such as Madam C.J. Walker, W.E.B. Du Bois, Thurgood Marshall, and more. Stephanie was very much interested in the well-being of Harlemites. She was known to put ads in the local newspapers educating the Harlem community about their legal rights, advocating for voting rights, and calling out police brutality against blacks. She spent the money on numerous community projects. She started a legal fund to help new French-speaking immigrants. She made sure all her employees were dressed impeccably and treated Harlemites with the utmost courtesy. By the late 20s, Stephanie St.Claire was rich and single, and she had so many suitors that she put an ad out in the papers addressing it. On November 20th, 1929, the New York Amsterdam News printed a statement from Madam St.Claire. It says, "To whom it may concern, I have received letters and telephone messages from men which have annoyed me very much, and I take this occasion to ask them publicly, please do not annoy me. I, Madam St.Claire, am not looking for a husband or a sweetheart. If they do not stop annoying me, I shall publish their names and letters in the newspaper." By 1930, Stephanie St.Claire was rolling in the dough. She was worth an estimated $500,000. But this didn't make her above the law. She had a brush with the law despite having several officers in her employ. St.Claire was arrested in December 1929 for the possession of policy slips. Stephanie was late on her payments to the cops. And on January 1st, 1930, 2 days after her arrest, she announced in the Amsterdam News, "I have been arrested and framed by 3 of the bravest and noblest cowards who wear civilian clothes." In March 1930, she was sentenced to 8 months in a work camp. Immediately upon her release, in December, St.Claire sought revenge. As part of an investigation into police corruption, St.Claire testified against the cops on her payroll and successfully had over a dozen officers suspended from the force. Because the numbers game was seen as a small-time racket by the underworld, the policy bankers were left to run Harlem in peace. That all changed in 1928, when a Harlem policy banker named Casper Holstein was kidnapped and held for $50,000 ransom. He was released 3 days later after the ransom was paid. The ease in the way the ransom was paid shed light on the amount of money being made in Harlem. The person said to be behind this kidnapping was a guy named Dutch Shultz, but it would be a few years before he made his move. In the early 30s, the Harlem's number racket was under full assault from the Schultz mob. Dutch saw Harlem as a replacement for Prohibition, which was going to end soon. And he didn't believe that black gangsters deserved all that money. He began by sending for policy bankers, and while sitting down at a table flanked by some of his muscle, he would remove his .45 from his waist and place it on the table before informing the banker that his bank now belonged to him and that he would be receiving a salary from now on. Most bankers got out of the business or went along with Dutch at a substantial reduction in pay in a business that they started. One person who would not bow down was Stephanie St.Claire. Like I said, she had balls. She let her intentions be known that she was not afraid of Dutch Schultz or any other living man. He'll never touch me. I'll kill Dutch Schultz if he sets foot in Harlem. He's a rat. The policy game is my game. Stephanie St.Claire moved swiftly against Dutch Schultz, organizing the remaining small black policy owners in her fight against the Dutchman. She and her allies violently confronted white store owners who were collecting bets on Schultz's behalf, smashing cases, destroying policy bets, and ordering their adversaries out of Harlem. St.Claire also took out ads in the papers encouraging Harlemites to play black and only place numbers bets with black bankers. In 1932, a guy named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson returned to Harlem from his vacation in Sing Sing. The feared killer became Queenie's muscle, and together they took the fight to the Dutchman, killing or kidnapping his men who were easy to spot, white gangsters in Harlem, also destroying numbers houses under the Dutchman's protection. Once Dutch sent one of his guys to intimidate the Queen. She got the upper hand and was able to lock him in a closet. Then she called her men to take care of him. Dutch retaliated by making threatening phone calls to Stephanie and putting a contract out on her head. The Queen responded by tipping off the police to Schultz's operation, which led to him to raiding his clearinghouse, arresting 14 employees and seizing around $2 million. Then she bragged about it in the press. She also took out ads in the newspapers as sort of an assurance, letting everybody know that if something happened to her, the Dutch did it. She recalled once having to hide from gunmen in a cellar while the janitor covered her with coal. The constant pressure from Dutch made it hard for the Madam Queen to operate, so she turned her day-to-day operations over to her lieutenant, Bumpy Johnson, while she went into hiding. On October 25th, 1935, Dutch Schultz had led for dessert at the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey. While the Dutchman was on his deathbed, he received a telegram. It read, "So you sow, so shall ye reap." Signed, Madam Queen of Policy. After the policy wars, Stephanie turned her attention to politics and civil rights. It was at this time where she met and married, by contract, a man by the name of Sufi Abdul Hamid. This guy was an eccentric, controversial, anti-Semitic race activist known in the press as the Black. This guy was a whole character. I've never heard about him until researching the Queen, but wow. Anyway, he advocated for black separatism while wearing a turban wrapped around his head, a black crimson lined cape, a green velvet blouse, and a black riding boots. Like I said, this guy was a whole character. Maybe one day I'll do a whole workup on this guy. All right. In their marriage contract, St.Claire and Hamid agreed to a 1-year trial period. If the pair declined not to continue their relationship at that point, they could terminate the contract. If, on the other hand, they remained certain of their feelings for each other, they could hold a legal ceremony. But it didn't even last a year, because on January 19, 1938, while Hamid was on his way to see his lawyer, shots rang out. Stephanie fired 3 times at Hamid, but lucky for him, she was a bad shot, and Hamid was unharmed. Stephanie had found out that he was having an affair with a conjure woman from Jamaica, and I guess she couldn't wait out the year. She was sentenced to 2 to 10 years in New York State prison. Upon her release, Stephanie St.Claire stayed out of the spotlight. She lived the rest of her life far away from the violence and treachery of the streets. Madame Stephanie St.Claire passed away peacefully in 1969 in Central Islip, New York, at the age of 71. She will always be remembered as the queen who took on public enemy number one and didn't fold. And that is the skinny on one Stephanie St.Claire, the Madam Queen of Policy. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. Make sure that you bump off that subscribe button. I heard he's been talking to the coppers over there, singing a nice little tune. All right, break that thumb, ring that bell, share the video, all of that YouTube stuff. All right, check out the merch store, get yourself something nice, get your guy something nice, get your gal something nice. All right, this has been A Few Bad Men. Keep your nose clean and don't take any wooden nickels. I'll see you in the funnies.